What if I told you the way you think, the way you react, the way you see yourself wasn't your design? It was programmed by your family, your culture, your trauma, every fear you obey, every limit you accept, every belief you've never questioned is just code someone else installed. And like any code, it can be rewritten, but not from the surface, not by thinking positive, not by motivation. You need to go deeper, into the system, into the loops, into the root scripts running your life. In this video, you'll learn how to break the subconscious programs that keep you small, reactive, and controlled, and how to rewire your mind to run on clarity, not conditioning. This isn't therapy. This is psychological warfare on the code that controls you. 1. The silent programming you didn't see coming. No one needed to chain you. No one needed to lock you down. They just had to install the right script, early enough, deep enough, quiet enough, and the rest you would do to yourself. This is how control works. In the modern world, not through fear, through conditioning, not through domination, through emotional loops, not through force, through story. You were programmed before you had a choice. Your family told you who you are. Your culture told you what's acceptable. Your school told you how to obey. Your trauma told you how to survive. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you stopped asking, is this even mine? The fear of speaking up, the need to be liked, the shame when you rest, the guilt when you say no, the voice in your head that doubts you, punishes you, keeps you in check. That voice isn't yours. It's inherited code. The truth is brutal. You've been running a system you didn't design, serving values you didn't choose, living roles you didn't question. And like any machine, you obey that code until it breaks you, or until you break it. But here's the trick. You can't fight what you can't see. And subconscious programming is invisible by design. That's why it works. You don't notice it. You just follow it. You think it's you think it's truth. But it's just repetition, installed by repetition, reinforced by repetition. So the first step is brutal clarity. You are not your thoughts. You are not your patterns. You are the one who can reprogram them, but only if you trace the code from surface reaction to buried origin, and that's exactly what we do next. 2. The 3 levels of subconscious control. If you want to break the program, you need to see the architecture. Subconscious control doesn't happen in one layer. It operates through levels, each one deeper, each one more invisible, each one more powerful. Here are the 3 core layers where you've been silently controlled. 1. Identity scripts. Who you are was assigned to you. From childhood, you were told who to be. You're the quiet one. You're too much. You're the good kid. You always mess things up. And you believed it. Not because it was true, but because it came from the people you needed love from. So you built your life around a role that wasn't chosen, just handed to you. This is the core identity script, an unconscious agreement to become someone for someone else's comfort, and you've been obeying that script ever since. 2. Emotional triggers, installed reactions that control you. Every time you explode in anger, freeze in shame, or collapse under guilt, that's not you. That's code firing. Your nervous system was trained to react a certain way, to maintain control of you. Anger was punished. Now you suppress it. Love was conditional. Now you perform to earn it. Failure was shamed. Now you fear trying. You're not reacting to the present. You're responding to a past. That's still running in your body, like a virus. And until you trace those triggers back to origin, you'll stay emotionally hijacked. 3. Decision filters. Your choices aren't fully yours. You think you make decisions freely, but look closer. How many of your choices are filtered through, will they approve? Will I still be loved? Will I look weak? Will I be accepted? These filters are silent, but they dictate everything. Where you go, who you love, what you tolerate, what you fear. Your decision-making system has been shaped by subconscious filters that prioritize survival over sovereignty. And the result? A life that feels chosen, but isn't truly yours. These 3 layers, identity, emotion, decision, form the invisible prison. You don't need bars. You don't need a cage. You just need code. That runs deep enough to make you never question it. But once you see the system, you can override it. And that's exactly what we do next. 3. The reverse programming process. Breaking subconscious code isn't about motivation. It's about surgical deconstruction. You don't fix a virus by ignoring it. You don't break programming by thinking positive. You trace, you dissect, you rewrite. Here's the 4-step process to reverse engineer your mental code. Step 1. Interrupt the loop. Every program runs on loops. Emotional reactions, repeating thoughts, predictable choices. And the first step to reclaiming control is to interrupt that pattern. In real time, you feel anger rising. Pause. You're about to apologize for existing. Pause. You hear that voice telling you you're not enough? Pause. Because every time you pause, you create a crack in the loop. And through that crack, you can begin extraction. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Stop running on autopilot. Start watching the code run. Step 2. Trace the source. Behind every loop is a source, a memory, a moment, a voice that first installed the belief. You weren't born ashamed. You were taught to be. You weren't born afraid to speak. You were silenced until you stopped trying. Reverse programming means asking the brutal question, where did I learn this response? And not stopping at me. Go further. Who gave it to you? Who benefited from you staying that way? Once you trace it, you remove its power. It's no longer invisible. It's just inherited. And what's inherited can be released. Step 3. Dismantle the narrative. Every code is wrapped in a story. I have to earn love. I'm only valuable if I produce. If I speak up, I'll be punished. I don't belong anywhere. These aren't truths. They're narratives, built on outdated data, emotionally charged moments, and someone else's limitations. So ask, is this story objectively true or just emotionally familiar? Challenge it, strip it down, replace emotion with logic, not feel-good logic, cold logic, facts, patterns, reality. When emotion leads, you repeat the loop. When logic leads, you rebuild the code. Step 4. Rewire with cold logic. Now that the old script is dismantled, You install new ones, deliberately, strategically, unemotionally. You decide, my value isn't conditional. Saying no isn't rejection, it's self-command. My frame is mine to build. No one owns it. I question everything that was handed to me. You repeat it. You live it. You test it under pressure. Not because it feels good, but because it works. Cold logic becomes your firewall. No more reacting, only responding by design. This process isn't instant. It's not comfortable. It's war, not with the world, with your own operating system. But if you run this process consistently, you stop being a product of programming and start becoming a designer of it. You stop reacting from the past and start responding from power. 4. Living with the new code. Psychological sovereignty. Once the old program breaks, silence follows. No familiar noise, no predictable patterns, no emotional loops to fall back on. It feels strange, even uncomfortable, because for the first time, you're not reacting. You're choosing, consciously, deliberately, and that is psychological sovereignty. Sovereignty means you are the system. No code runs without your permission. No belief survives without being tested. No reaction happens without your awareness. You're not just thinking differently. You're running a new internal OS. Here's what changes. You stop justifying your boundaries. They're not up for debate, they just are. You stop seeking approval. Validation is no longer currency. Clarity is. You stop playing emotional games. You don't manipulate. You don't get manipulated. You observe, you decide, you exit or engage on your terms. You stop outsourcing authority. No voice is louder than your inner logic. Not your parents, not your past, not even your emotions. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. You feel. But you don't drown. You care. But you don't compromise. You hear the old voices, but they don't drive anymore. That's the shift. From unconscious reaction to conscious response. From survival mode to command mode. From default identity to self-engineered frame. Most people live on borrowed scripts. You're now writing your own. That's why it feels different. Lighter, sharper, cleaner. No more mental clutter. No more emotional noise, just precision. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to prove anything. You just walk in the code you wrote, and that's power no one can access, because it was never given to you. It was built by you. This is what real freedom looks like, not the absence of limits, but the presence of intentional ones. You become mentally untouchable, because the world can't program what it can't penetrate. 5. The war isn't outside. It's in your head. The war you've been fighting was never out there. Not with your family, not with your boss, not with the people who hurt you. It's always been inside your reactions, inside your loops, inside the code you've been running, without even knowing. They didn't need to chain your body, they just had to hijack your mind, tell you who you are, what you deserve, what you're worth, and repeat it until you believed it. Once that code was in, you did the rest of the work for them. You silenced yourself. You shrunk your dreams. You second-guessed your instincts. And all the while, you thought it was just how life is. But it wasn't life. It was programming. That's why this war can't be won through confrontation. You can cut people off, change jobs, move cities, but if the code is still running, nothing changes. Because no matter where you go, you bring the virus with you. until you confront it, extract it, and replace it line by line. Real power doesn't come from defeating others. It comes from defeating the version of you that let them in. It comes from knowing that the real enemy wasn't the control, it was the belief that you couldn't take it back. Now you know better. Now you hold the pen. Now the script is yours. So write carefully, write clearly, and never let anyone install code in you again without your conscious permission. 6. Final CTA. You were programmed to follow, to shrink, to obey, and for years you did. Not because you were weak, but because you didn't know. You were running on someone else's code, but now you do. And that changes everything. Because awareness breaks the loop. Awareness gives you choice. And choice is the beginning of psychological freedom. So here's your mission. From this point forward, question everything that was handed to you. Every belief, every reaction, every voice in your head. That tells you who to be. Don't accept. Don't resist. Just observe and trace. And when you find the code, rewrite it. Because once you reclaim your operating system, no one can control you without your permission. In the next video, we move deeper into invisible influence. You'll learn how power speaks without ever saying a word. Shadow communication. The language behind words, the signals that shape behavior, the silence that dominates attention. You've taken back control of your mind. Now, it's time to control how it communicates.